Emma lived alone in a small, cluttered apartment on the edge of the city. Her life was quiet, predictable, and sometimes unbearably lonely. One Saturday, she wandered through a flea market, drawn by a stall selling vintage electronics. Among the dusty radios and old cameras, she spotted it, a bulky, retro television set covered in scratches but still intact. The seller smiled. "Not much use anymore," he said, "but it's got character." Emma paid the small price and carried the TV home, imagining it as a cool decoration for her living room. That evening, Emma plugged it in. The screen flickered to life, but no channels came through. Instead, the screen filled with static, a swirling, endless storm of black and white noise. She sighed, a bit disappointed, but decided to leave it on for ambience. As the night deepened, she noticed something strange. For a brief, flickering moment, the static seemed to shift. A shadow moved inside it. At first, she thought it was just her eyes playing tricks after a long day. But the feeling settled in, something was there, watching. Each night, Emma found herself drawn back to the TV. The static was hypnotic, and that shadow became a shape, tall, thin, vaguely human. It never left the noise but seemed to watch her. On the third night, it appeared closer. She blinked and it was gone. Emma's sleep grew restless. She started hearing whispers, faint and indistinct, like voices buried deep in white noise. She told herself it was nothing, just the stress of living alone. But the TV's glow filled her room with an unnatural chill. On the fifth night, something changed. As she sat on the couch, staring at the static, the figure looked directly at her, eyes bright, filled with a cold, hollow sadness. Emma froze. The air around her thickened, heavy and electric. Suddenly, the static on the screen rippled like water, and for a split second, she saw the man step out of the noise, a flicker, a shimmer, before the screen went black. Emma didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Emma woke up with a pounding headache and the taste of metal in her mouth. The TV was dark, the static gone. She tried to convince herself it was just a nightmare, a product of too many late nights and too much caffeine. But deep down, something didn't feel right. She reached for the remote, but it didn't work. The TV was off and wouldn't turn back on. Frustrated, she unplugged it and set it aside. For the rest of the day, she avoided looking at the corner where it sat, like it might reach out and pull her in. That evening, Emma tried to distract herself with a book, but the silence in the apartment was suffocating. She kept hearing faint noises, static crackling softly, like whispers. She shook her head and closed her eyes, trying to block it out. Then the TV flickered back on by itself. The screen filled with white noise, but this time, the figure was clearer than ever. The man stood in the middle of the static, staring right at her. His eyes glowed faintly, like distant stars, and his smile was a twisted line that didn't reach his eyes. Emma wanted to turn away, but something rooted her to the spot. The room grew colder and the shadows seemed to stretch toward her. Then the whispering started, soft, urgent, impossible to understand. It wasn't coming from the TV alone. It echoed around the room, bouncing off the walls. She blinked, and the figure moved closer, stepping forward in slow, jerky motions. Her heart hammered in her chest as a single word echoed in the static. "Emma." The voice wasn't quite human, more like a broken recording, fragmented and warped. The man reached out through the screen, fingers stretching as if trying to grab her. Emma stumbled back, tripping over a chair. She tore her eyes from the screen and unplugged the TV again. The room plunged into darkness, the whispers dying instantly. Her breathing was ragged. She forced herself to calm down. It was just a trick, a hallucination maybe. She needed to get rid of the TV, but when she looked down, the remote was in her hand. Glowing faintly with a cold blue light, her phone buzzed. A message appeared from an unknown number. "You can't leave, not yet." Emma's blood ran cold. Emma stared at her phone, the message burning in her mind like a warning. She didn't recognize the number, and yet the words felt personal, like something was watching her, waiting for her to respond. Her fingers hovered over the screen, but she didn't reply. Suddenly, The TV flickered back on, casting the room in eerie blue light. The static roared louder than before, filling the silence with a low hum that rattled her bones. The man was closer now, his glowing eyes boring into her soul. The smile on his face was wider, twisted with something dark and cruel. Emma wanted to scream, but no sound came out. The whispers returned, louder, more urgent. They spoke in broken phrases, fragments of conversations she didn't understand, but felt deep in her bones. The man's figure began to move out of the static, reaching toward the edges of the screen. Emma's vision blurred, the room warping around her. She felt herself slipping, pulled toward the TV's glowing surface. Panic seized her chest. But then the screen cracked, a jagged line splitting the man's face in two. He hissed, recoiling back into the static. Emma seized the moment and lunged for the unplugged cord. She yanked it free. The room went black. Silence. Her breaths came fast and shallow as she sat in the darkness, clutching the cord. Was it over? Had she escaped? Then her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "We're just beginning." Emma shivered. The man in the static wasn't done with her. The silence in the room was suffocating, broken only by the soft buzz of Emma's phone. Her fingers trembled as she stared at the message on the screen. No words this time, just a photo. It was a picture of her apartment taken from somewhere outside through the cracked blinds. Her breath caught in her throat. She spun around, heart pounding, searching the dark corners of the room for any sign of movement. Nothing. The TV remained off, lifeless, but the feeling of being watched didn't fade. Emma's phone lit up again. Another photo. This one was from inside her apartment, from the living room, looking directly at her. She dropped the phone, the screen shattering on the floor. Panic flooded her veins. She grabbed her coat and keys and fled out the door, not daring to look back. Outside, the night was unnaturally still. The streetlights flickered, casting long shadows that seemed to stretch and crawl. Her phone buzzed one more time. A message appeared. "I'm closer than you think." Emma's legs moved on their own, carrying her faster and faster away from her apartment, down streets she barely recognized. The city felt like a maze. The shadows followed her, stretching longer, reaching. She glanced behind, nothing but empty streets. But the feeling of cold eyes burning into her back didn't go away. Hours later, she found herself at a rundown motel on the edge of town. The neon sign flickered weakly, promising safety. Inside, Emma locked the door, barricading it with a chair. She sank onto the bed, breathing hard. Her phone remained silent. For a moment, relief. Then the TV in the motel room flickered on by itself. Static, and then that same shadowy man appeared closer, clearer than ever. He smiled. Emma's blood ran cold. The man whispered, voice like broken glass, "You can't hide from me." The static crackled, the screen glowing brighter. Emma grabbed the remote, smashing it against the floor. The screen shattered into shards of glass and light. The room went dark. But outside, somewhere in the city, the static whispered her name. Emma's heart hammered in her chest. The room was pitch black, silent except for her ragged breathing. The shattered TV screen glowed faintly on the floor, shards of glass sparkling like stars in the dark. She wanted to believe it was over, that breaking the TV had broken the connection. But the cold was still there, seeping in through the cracks in the walls, wrapping around her like invisible chains. Her phone vibrated sharply on the bedside table. She grabbed it with trembling hands. A final message appeared, glowing on the screen. "I'm inside now." Her blood turned to ice. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. The motel room was no longer empty. The shadowy man stood just inches from her, eyes like black voids, face half melted and warped by static. His voice echoed in her mind, not from his lips, but from everywhere at once. "You invited me." Emma stumbled backward, knocking over the chair, desperate to get away. But the room shifted, walls bending like they were made of liquid. The man reached out. His fingers blurred and distorted like flickering pixels. Emma screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the static that filled the air. Then everything went silent. She woke up hours later, alone on the motel floor. The TV was gone. The phone was dead. The room was normal, or as normal as it could be. But Emma knew better. She didn't stay. The next morning she left town, leaving her apartment, the TV, and all her belongings behind. Sometimes late at night, when the world is quiet and the air hums with electricity, Emma still hears it. The crackling, the whisper, her name. And she knows the man in the static never really leaves. He waits, watching, always ready to come back.